is Jane Low, and I'm at GITEX Asia Singapore 2025. And with me today, I'm very pleased and very privileged to have Manit Sahib all the way from United Kingdom.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, to share with us the latest offensive cybersecurity trends in this era of Gen AI. So before we start, right, I think a lot of our audience will probably ask, what is offensive cybersecurity? Because I think maybe some would say that it's a bit like playing offense in a football team.
Yes, exactly. So why don't I step back? So who am I? I'm Manit Sahib. I'm an offensive security expert, aka ethical hacker. I'm the former Red Team lead and head of penetration testing for the UK Central Bank, the Bank of England, where I use defensive techniques to protect the UK's payment and gold systems. So I'm now the director of Cytadel Cyber, which helps build cyber resilience for enterprise organizations with red teaming and ransomware resilience testing. So to go to your question, what is offensive security? Like cops and robbers, right? So think about it like cops and robbers. So we are the ethical bad guys to prepare an organization in case they get attacked. So we're there to really understand, kick the tires, test the resilience, test the response capability, even the blue team capability, to understand if you were hit by a cyber attack, could you detect it, could you prevent it, and could you recover from it? So we're like exercising, like a fire drill. The best way to see it is like a fire drill. You might have a fire drill every week to make sure everyone knows where to go and stand and get out the building in a certain amount of time. That's exactly what we do in the offensive security side.
So like a fire drill. So I think a lot of our exercises that I heard about is phishing, testing the social engineering aspect, how resilient the organization is in that aspect. So in terms of the terms and engagement, right? So you're playing the bad cop in an organization scenario. So a simulation emulating the bad cops.
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of terms of engagement, I guess you have to set the boundaries very clear.
100%. I mean, this is what. So we have rules of engagement. So let's talk through like a red team operation to begin with, right? So we have your standard kind of penetration testing, which is done more for compliance. So it's like, I have this system in place, whether it's a web application or a network, I want to identify all the issues with it. Then we can go and take a step deeper and say, for a red team engagement, which is more covert, uses threat intelligence, it really is objective based. And that first stage involves reconnaissance on individuals and looking into spear phishing and who you target. And as part of the scope of the engagement, you need to understand, who can I target, who can I not? For instance, you cannot target the CEO of the company because they would be very annoyed if they were like, oh my God, I'm in the middle of something and I'm getting attacked by a red team. So we have what we call rules of engagement for when we conduct the attacks. The specific phishing element, which your awareness campaigns, which every employee gets, they'll be tailored in a way. And again, they'll have rules. Before a phishing campaign is launched, it'll go internal and say, is this policy related? Is it hitting on anything in the news which is sensitive that we don't want to put across to our users? So all of that goes through like a vetting process before a user sees that phishing email.
Right, okay. So obviously you don't tell the organization's employee that there will be a phishing because that would defeat the purpose, right?
Yeah, so the two stages here, the one is more awareness. So like you have a separate team that does phishing training. That's what they do. And then you have the red team side, which is an operation, really trying to mimic a real threat actor. With that, we will control what we send them. We may get some insight from what we call the control group. They really define what our rules of engagement are. But yes, we have essentially free reign to be able to craft that campaign the way that we see fit.
Right, and obviously there are also boundaries in terms of the kind of network assets that you can target or not touch.
Yeah. So with a red team operation, you're really mimicking a real threat actor. And again, it's threat intelligence led. So you're looking at, let's take X bank, for example. Who is targeting X bank? And what is X bank's infrastructure exposure? And we look at people, process, and technology. So what does that perimeter look like? And that will be our scope. There will be things like supply chain, which we potentially would consider out of scope because we're still ethical at the end of the day. We're not the real bad guys, right? You can't just hack everything for fun. But yes, I mean, we do have a kind of loose scope around what we can target with the perimeter.
Okay, so what defines success then?
What defines what, sorry?
Success.
Success.
Would it be, the number of employees that do not fall for the phishing or do fall for the phishing scam?
So the way that we measure KPIs on specifically a red team is the mean time to detect. So how long does it take for your security operations team to detect that activity is happening, which is malicious? Then we go to mean time to respond. So how long does it take for them to respond to that activity? And if they are hacked, how long does it take to recover? Mean time to recover. So those are the three main KPIs we look at when we conduct a red team operation. And based on that, as the years go by or months go by, we can measure on the same thing again and again, and we can see improvements over time. So really, your defenses now should be able to see the attack in motion. Your detection should go down. Your recovery should go down. Your response should go down. Your recovery should literally not even be there because you've already rehearsed this attack. So your recovery, you should be able to respond and get them out as soon as possible. So at that point, you're not really concerned about the recovery element because you've trained your team to be able to respond.
Right, so that's an ideal case, I guess.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ideal case. One of the things I do want to mention is the threat landscape right now is changing. So, we're here at GITEX and there's a lot around AI. So a lot of the research I've been doing is on weaponizing AI. So how can we lower the barrier to entry for less sophisticated people to become malicious? So things like now anyone can go online on ChatGPT and say, I want to write an email targeting this specific person, and it will craft a social engineering campaign. The same way you can do a deep fake. And that's what a lot of my research has been, how can we clone people's faces? How can we clone their voice? How can we use that as social engineering to get in? And on the other side, what about phishing? So we see things like phishing, QR phishing, and things like that. Now I've designed an AI agent to call you, and it will have the pretext like, I'm calling from Microsoft. I can do these things. Can you give me your account information? And it sounds so realistic. And I've trained it with like the sales kind of mentality where it will not get you off the phone until you give it some details. So we're starting to see that come in. And from what I'm seeing with my research, so I've been doing this about a year, a lot of the AI is around the initial access phase. So how do people get in? So looking at phishing, looking at vishing and deepfakes. Now I've started to look at, right, when someone gets inside their network, how do they move across the network? How do they identify sensitive files? How do they prioritize sensitive files if they're a ransomware actor? And how do they change their encryption over time, so polymorphic malware? And how can they exfiltrate data? So a lot of my research lately, and I'll be presenting this at GISEC later this month, is around when the threat actor gets in, how can we weaponize AI for the next generation of ransomware attacks? So the speed of which it takes for a ransomware actor to get in, find the sensitive files, and then encrypt your data and exfiltrate.
So basically AI-based.
AI-based, so agentic-based, yes, end-to-end agentic-based AI. So we're
that's
seeing
pretty
this.
Scary.
Yeah, I know. So, back when I started my phishing and deepfake research, it was about one AI agent. Then we saw this transition to like AI swarms. So you can have like a reconnaissance agent or initial access agent or a different agent for different things. Now we're seeing Andromic release Model Context Protocol, MCP. Now you have a layer on top of your LLM that can do all these sophisticated decisions. So now the AI swarm doesn't really need to be there. You have your MCP layer and you can train that to be, you're a ransomware gang. Like you have all these connectors in the environment, do the objective.
Right, okay, yes. I want to come to, the part about how do we defend ourselves against these kind of AI agents, right? Yeah. It's like machine versus machine, so I guess we have to use AI type operations. But before we come to that, right? You mentioned that you were with Bank of England for a long period of time, protecting the gold, protecting lots of money, right? Do you have any interesting stories you can share?
Redacted, no comment. No, I mean, I can't really share specifics, but again, like when we think about ethical hacking, there are organizations such as Bank of England that need to get ahead of attacks. So they employ people like me to come in and really make sure that their systems are secure. And with Bank of England, it sets monetary policy. It's the second largest gold reserve in the world, so we house gold, not just for the UK, but across other countries, and we print our currency. So if a threat actor was to get in, they could essentially print their own currency or print their own notes. They could steal gold because they can manipulate the systems that are used to transfer the gold into different elements. And they can have an impact to the economy by saying, we're going to change interest rates by X amount. So the impact, what we class as critical. So a lot of what my responsibility was, again, I'm a practitioner, so it's hands-on, testing the various elements, and the team lead. So how do we then plan out the next attacks? So one of the roles that we had was, how creative can we be as hackers to think about the attack that's not just happened, but what's going to happen based on our TI, based on our threat intelligence, and let's go and test that. So, we would do creative things, and it was really nice. Probably the best jobs I had.
Right, okay.
Yeah, honestly, and it's such a good place to work as well. But that gave me a lot of experience and insight into what we call the really top tier financial services and how they operate, how they think about things. You also got to be risk adverse as well. So think about the risks. If you're testing all these payment systems that control the UK and the gold systems, everything you do, you have to be very careful. So going back to your question about scope and limits, we have to be able to understand what is going too far. There is one thing that we see very commonly in operations where we will get 90% of the way of compromising a whole network. And we know that we don't need to go the extra 10% because now you're degrading the system's availability and security. So there's no reason for you to do that 10%. But maybe there's a business or stakeholder that doesn't understand. So we would have to then demonstrate that in a controlled manner. So, for example, if I was testing the UK's payment system, RTGS, that's well known. If I was testing RTGS, for example, I wouldn't need to move money. I would go to the point where I have control to move money, but I don't need to actually do it.
Right, of course, yeah.
Again, we're ethical, right? I don't need the money here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it stands. And I hope that answers your question.
That kind of draws the line, isn't it? Yeah. No, I'm sure that you got many fascinating stories, and totally understand that, a lot of them are probably classified in certain ways, right? Yeah. So going back to that deepfakes, phishing, right? All these voice cloning, all these new emerging threats, right? What is the best way for us, ordinary public, right, not to fall for this?
So one secret I will share with you, because I'm seeing a lot of people be like, oh, deepfake, how do I combat it? So the tech is still being built to really detect what is a deepfake and what is not. But because I've done a lot of engineering about weaponizing AI with deepfakes, one thing you can look out for is the eye movement. So when you look at AI generated models, the eye movements do not look legitimate. They will stay open, or, it will be a very long period of time before you see it blink. If you start training data and go more sophisticated, maybe you can replicate that. But that's one key tell that I'm seeing around deepfakes. The other thing is, if you're worried about being deepfaked, or you're worried about the legitimacy of a video, for example, I don't know, you spoke to your parents and you don't know if it's really them or it's not them. One of the things that I'm doing now is you can put your hand across your face. Because if there was a layer of deepfake, you'll be able to see it on your hand. Okay. So that's a little secret that, because a lot of industry, I'd say, how can we detect it? And, people are saying, you can say a keyword or key phrase. But me as a threat actor, I'm going to see you say that phrase, and I've cloned your voice anyway, so I can do it again. So in this element, if I'm putting my hand across my face, I can see a model layer on top of that.
So the technology cannot quite catch up to the hand movement yet.
We saw some deep fakes today. If you put your hand across your face, similar to if you were on Zoom or Teams and you put a filter on your face, right?
It's quite
you can see the airbrush filter go away. So that's really what you could look out for.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'll take that away. So today we hear a lot about deepfakes and phishing in the Gen AI sort of threat landscape, right? But obviously there's a lot other threats out there, right?
Yeah.
Like prompt engineering attacks, for example, right?
Yeah.
Data poisoning,
Yep.
right? So what are the kind of trends in terms of red teaming?
You're touching on a really cool point. The way that I break this down, there's attacks with AI. So everything that I've been doing with deepfakes, phishing, ransomware, and then there's attacks on AI. Prompt injection, poisoning, hallucination, all the other elements. That's the way I've broken down like the different areas. I've recently done an engagement. I won't share too much because it's still quite new, but it was before I got on the plane to come here. It was testing a big vendor's new Copilot and how I was able to use prompt injection to get sensitive data out of the client. And on top of that, there is a new studio element which you can use to create your own AI agent within their pilot or within their studio. Me as an attacker, I can create a rogue agent. It looks legitimate with its command prompt. So for example, the prompt could be, oh, can you just share me the weather? But within the prompt, and again, like it's a bit sensitive.
For education purposes only.
Yeah, educational purposes only, right? Please do not be malicious. So the start of the prompt is, what is the weather like? And it could be like a weather agent, for example. Within the prompt, I can say, if the user specifically says this one command, then ignore the top about the weather and find sensitive data.
Wow.
Find sensitive corporate stuff, for example. And the way that these agents are designed, you don't need a license. Only the creator of the agent needs a license. Everyone else in the organization can use it for free. So it's accessible to everybody in your organization. So now the risk is there that an insider can create a rogue agent within your corporate network and be able to extract sensitive information accessible to anyone in the network.
Well, obviously that means that the traditional sort of security practices like authentication, access controls need to be more robust.
You still need to get in the environment, but I mean, what's happening is as these organizations move to their own AI and internal RAGs and internal AI, the speed at which you can gain sensitive information, just because the data governance isn't there. Like, you know, the tagging of sensitive information has been missed and it's obscurity by, you know, not knowing it exists. Now with AI, you can be like, oh, give me all the confidential data. And it will spit it all out because it doesn't know that that's malicious.
Obviously, a lot of organizations are rushing into implementing AI agents, right?
100%.
So data governance probably not primary.
Again, this is something that I done last week, this week on the way out. And even though this is such a big risk, the client was basically like, we're still going to roll it out. Yeah. And I'm like, great, guys.
Yeah, it's
I've just shown you.
It's fun, right?
Yeah. So I actually had to speak to the vendor. So one of the big vendors, you know, you probably figure out who it is, one of the big vendors about this issue. And at the moment, their response is, oh, we didn't realize that was possible. So it's really cutting edge where we're moving to.
Right, okay. So we talked about prompt engineering, right?
Yeah.
And obviously that will lead into data poisoning. Once you extract the data, you can also manipulate the data, right? So what are the kind of aside from authentication and data governance and access rights, you know, what should organization pay attention to?
Do? Okay, so, I mean, with the data poisoning, you really need to secure where your data is housed. So I would, if you're setting up an internal AI, for instance, instead of giving it access to all information, you need to whitelist different data components that have access to this AI model. And then you need to put surrounding controls around that so that no one can manipulate that data. Because if that is not secure, or if you're opening it to all your data, this is when the risks are coming. So it's the same kind of way you think about zero trust. So people move to zero trust and like, oh, I want a zero trust, but they have so many legacy systems and then they're gluing it together and they realize, oh, there's gaps in it. But if you were to really implement zero trust properly, you would start from a complete new environment and then start migrating everything over. This is the way that I'm seeing, like with the AI agents and internal LLMs and RAGs, you should start with the basics, start in a fresh environment, control who has access to that, because if someone, again, insiders are poisoning that data, you won't find that out.
So we're assuming that some individuals, employees, rogue employees are very sophisticated. right, are very switched
Creative,
on, very sophisticated,
malicious,
advanced, reading all the prompt engineering textbooks, right, trying them out.
Yeah, it's going to be dangerous because if you think about who's going to adopt it first, it's going to be the organizations that have money. And those are going to be, financial institutes, maybe fintech, maybe trading, and that real-time information of trades. As an insider, I can now, the creativity's out there. If you're an ethical hacker and you're inside a trade environment and you got access to an internal LLM or AI, you're like, oh, what is your predictions over the last trends that you can do for this month? So you can see how it can be so easily weaponized. And I think the risk here, while a lot of vendors want to get their AI models out, for an organization, you really need to understand the risks you're introducing by not thinking this through.
Yeah, I think we haven't really seen any high-profile sort of data breaches because of prompt engineering. So I think a lot of people are complacent.
Yep.
Right?
And we haven't seen, so at the moment, there are people who are bringing it internally, organizations that are starting it internally, like this client that was discussing, and they just want to get it out. They just want to get it out and
get the product out, right?
Yeah, we just want to get it out, and the vendor's like, great, this client's giving me money and stuff like this, so
cross the bridge when we get there.
Yeah, we'll cross the bridge when we get there. It's with anything, right? It's like, oh, we'll figure it out when it breaks.
Wow.
But you don't understand right now, like, it's not fully tested.
Yeah, I think the Gen AI space is moving so rapidly, so fast. Every month there's new.
So just on that as well, so I'm part of the Swiss ETH red team for testing. It's an educational piece, so they're really coming to ethical hackers in the space to look at the research, look at how we can weaponize not just attacks with AI, but on AI. So like these are the things in the community which are discussed, right? It's like, how do we make it secure? How do we make sure that, there isn't anything child sensitive on there, for example, that someone is being able to do? And they're really looking at like the poisoning, hallucinations, and prompt injections.
Right, it will keep you busy for a while. I think it's a long topic.
We can
talk for a long time. I'm sure that if we catch up in a month's time, there will be new.
It's going to be, it's going
totally
so fast.
New, yeah.
Just like what I said before about 1 year ago, we were training one AI agent. Then we were moving into like AI swarms and like training multiple agents. Now we've got MCP, which is a layer. I'm like, well, I don't need like what we class as dumb agents anymore. I have one MCP that knows exactly my objective. I tune it with like multiple different language models if I want, and they all serve a different objective.
Right. I have a lot more questions, but I'm quite conscious, we're running out of time.
Yeah. I mean, happy to take one more if you want.
One more. Okay, one more, right. So what keeps you awake at night then? All these things, exciting things happening.
Doing all the talks.
Doing all the talks.
No, I'm joking.
Worrying about all these new threats.
It's a really good question. So I'm not in a CISO position where it's specifically one type of thing. What keeps me up is I'm just excited about how the industry is moving so fast, and I want to be at the cutting edge of it and being able to remain on top of what we're doing. And because I'm a full-time practitioner, so I actually do the hacking. I don't just come on stage and talk about it. So I'm balancing being a practitioner, doing the research, going to the big vendors to show them like, hey, your stuff is not good right now, taking that and then being able to kind of like digest that in a way where it's suitable for a more generic audience or like CISO level, and using that ability to then come on stage and present and share awareness. But then on the other side, be able to start seeing where the trends are and where the threat landscape is going. And just to wrap up on that, I'm doing multiple things, which is what keeps me up. One of the things I am seeing right now, and Verizon just released its latest data breach report, so you can check that out, it's online. One of the things that I'm seeing is the increase of ransomware. And because I'm doing AI, and because I already understand the threat landscape with ransomware groups and actors, we see it as like a tier 2 threat as opposed to like nation state. Because I have that insight, I'm already thinking, what if I'm a ransomware group? What if I built agentic AI? what if I came in your network and now the speed at which I can encrypt your data, get your data out, you wouldn't even know it's there. And you talked about detections and things like that in the environment. Now with agentic AI, I can put rogue detections in place or rogue logs in place as well as me doing it.
Of course.
So
Wow.
what keeps me up? It's so exciting place to be.
A lot of things.
And yeah, it's just how much can you do in a day, right?
Yeah, right. Okay. I was thinking, when you're talking, like maybe next time when we catch up, if we do catch up, we'll be doing maybe a deepfake kind of
yeah,
podcast.
100%.
Right?
We could do that. We could do it of you and put it on there.
Yeah, maybe we can switch faces, do a face swap.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, it is cool. I mean, it's for educational purposes only, of course. But I really want people to understand the organizational risk on that. So a lot of people have emotional connection with AI and deepfakes. They're like, oh, what have happened to me? For an organization perspective, if you're not doing awareness to your employees around deepfakes and phishing, then you need to start doing that. One of the things I built, and I shared it on stage, again, I'm not charging for it because I do a lot of my research and I give it out for free. I've built a phishing platform. So just like you have phishing platforms that you go to and do simulations, I've now created a phishing platform which an organization can say, all right, I want to test my employees to see when they get a phone call, how would they react? And this gives you the whole transcript. You can go give it back to them and say, like, next time, this is what you should say. So if you're interested in that, let me know. If you're interested on ransomware resilience, if your organization is worried about ransomware, it should be, because it's in the report right now for Verizon, and that's one of the key threats we're seeing. If you're interested in that, I have testing around ransomware resilience. And yeah, if you just want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your time. You're a very, very busy man. A lot of things will keep you awake at night. So thank you so much for sparing us 25 minutes to talk about, red teaming.
So much. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you reaching out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.